It's Monday, May 12th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, we talk about children, adolescents, and adults who have really complex behavioral needs. We ask what kind of supports are needed for folks to reach their full potential while prioritizing safety, dignity, and joy. And I've got just the folks for this conversation. Full house for the discussion today. As you listen, if you've got thoughts for us, the signal at cbc.ca for emails. Text us 709-327-8206. Well, I'll start with two folks, then I'm going to add two more folks, and later on we're going to make a phone call. So that's the rough conversation order. But then there will be a big old group chat through the hour. Walsh Martino is here. Hi, Laura. How you doing?
I'm great, Adam. How are you?
Good. So this whole show started. I was having a tour at the Amal Youth and Family Center, and we ran into each other. And we started talking about what you do, and I said, "Gosh, we should do some kind of something around this." And yet here we are today.
Here we are.
Could you fill us in a little on what it is, where I was that day, and just like what you do, and then we'll bring everyone else into this conversation.
Absolutely. So Amal Youth and Family Center is the larger umbrella, and under Amal Youth and Family Center, we offer a lot of different services and programs in a variety of areas. I currently am the manager of behavioral health supports, which is one program area that we currently offer. My program area actually started Amal's not very old. I believe we're turning 4 in August. I could be wrong.
I think that's about right.
I think that's about right. However, behavioral health will be turning 3 in November. So I came on after the first year because what was happening is that there were so many phone calls around, kind of threefold. Number one, the challenges that individuals with extreme challenging behavior, and I'm not talking about mild level of challenges, I'm talking about to the point that some individuals causing a lot of self-injury, aggression towards others, eloping, extreme emotional outbursts, paired with the fact that there was an impact on their health. So because of this, poor health outcomes, lack of community service offerings, lack of time spent in the community, social isolation, hence affecting quality of life. And then with the third piece, the strain that had on parents and caregivers, which was difficult because what we were hearing was that parents and caregivers weren't able to find services to meet those needs. So that was essentially the foundation from what we started to build our program on to ensure that we were providing services in line with some very intense needs that are in our community.
And this is if we're going to, you mentioned the umbrella under Amal for where you fit. The umbrella for the show today, it's exactly what you're talking about there, right? So folks who need, on this extreme end, who need lots of support, families need support. We're talking gaps in the system where you folks come into it, and we'll also hear how families have navigated family life from day to day, right? So
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got yourself. Introduce who's your good friend here next to you.
You go ahead.
So my name is Sarah McCarthy, and I'm the Senior Behavior Analyst for Amal Behavioural Health Supports. And I started day one with the department and have been helping Laura grow it so that we can provide services and fill gaps in service for individuals all across the province. One of the things that I kind of observed in my years of working in the helping or caring field is that there is a significant gap for individuals who engage in extremely dangerous behavior. And through kind of working with these individuals and recognizing that I didn't really know how to work with these individuals effectively, I went ahead and I found, the science of ABA. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of how the science is what we use as our main approach to assessing and developing individualized programs for those that we serve at Amal.
So when we say ABA, What do we mean? And why is it so important for this specific conversation we're having? Because there's a bigger one to be had on a different show. But for this, how does it fit with this conversation today?
So I think for me, it's really important to clear up the misconception around ABA. So many people think that ABA is a therapy for individuals with autism. And that's just not true. ABA is a large scientific field, and I guess it's the study of behavior, right? It's the scientific study of behavior. So we kind of use our science to assess what's going on behaviorally for individuals. And the individuals that we are talking about are individuals with, again, severe forms of dangerous behavior. And then as well as use our science to kind of look at different individualized interventions that we can do to help with reduce some of these dangerous behaviors, while also meaningfully teaching skills so that we can, give individuals and their families the best quality of life possible.
So when we say dangerous behaviors, what do we mean?
So when we're talking dangerous behaviors, we're talking about things that cause an imminent safety risk, either for the individual or others around them. So we're talking like severe physical aggression in which people may be concussed, there may be broken bones, there's usually hospital visits involved. We are also talking about severe self-injury. Sometimes that can be in the form of like eye gouging or like scratching to break skin, again, where medical intervention would be warranted, or severe property destruction in which, someone completely destroys a room, there are exposed wires, this type of thing, which causes a risk to themselves and others just because of kind of what has occurred.
Yeah, so your jobs then is to work with the individuals, but the individual on a person-by-person basis, as well as their families, to kind of listen to say, what's the dynamic? How can we best assist this person to help them for whether it's a child for playing skills or if it's a young adult or an adult for some of these life functioning skills, to kind of work all together to help improve the life and living of these folks. Is this kind of the rough nutshell of what you do?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have that established. So this is where we are for establishing this conversation of today. I'm going to bring two other people into this chat here. We've got Pottle here. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Tell us about yourself and your family.
You're
like, how long do I have? Well, just give us. So you're it's three kids, right?
Yeah,
so tell us a little bit about.
I'm a parent of three kids. Yeah. I have a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And I actually work in. I'm a social worker, and I work in community services in the urban Indigenous community. And so my kiddos have had some challenges with navigating like traditional settings of like education, daycare, after-school program settings, childcare settings. And it's created challenges within the dynamics of our family and, kind of the wellness of our family unit as well. So that's kind of what brought us to Amal's doorstep.
Okay. And so we'll dig a bit more into this now shortly. I want to bring Cory McDonald into the discussion. How you doing, Cory?
Doing good, Adam. First off, thank you for having us and bringing these issues to light. And I can't begin without thanking them all for inviting me to be here to participate in this. I'm a dad of two beautiful daughters. Kennedy Eden, she's the woman with special needs and the villain of Amal Services, and another Angel Avery. It's just like they hit it on the nail with aggressive behavior, outbursts, and how to manage things like that, which is sorely lacking in the system today. And just having them all on board, the improvements noticed, and having that option there for us as a family, it's irreplaceable.
Let's go to the beginning, I guess. I mean, with life, when did you start realizing Kennedy's needs, and how did that change the family? Like, what did that mean for family life?
Well, Kennedy's our firstborn, and she was born with a rare chromosome 14 abnormality. No one else. They found a girl in Germany with a similar abnormality, but not the same. So we had no idea what path we were on.
So the only other case is someone in Germany.
Yeah, with
like,
similar.
Was similar.
Yeah. it's just
globally.
de novo. Yeah, it's just
Okay,
like,
so like beyond rare.
yeah, they checked me and Tina, and hopefully that one of us had it because we turned out somewhat normal, but we didn't. And but we had no idea. Like no one had to tell us. Like she's followed by genetics and stuff like that. That we had no idea what role we were in for. It's not a pleasant role, but it's a card we're dealt and the card we're playing.
Yeah. So as Kennedy, who's
22.
22 now, right? Life through school. What was life like?
What has life been like? School system, big struggle. Roncalli Elementary School. I don't think they experienced a child like Kennedy either, but the best thing about Roncalli, they work with us. It was a lot of struggles, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of not being on the same page, but they work with us. MacDonald Junior High, they never did figure it out, but last 5 years of school system with Gonzaga High School, they were great.
Yeah.
But then, like, we finally found a place that we can bring Kennedy to Gonzaga and knew that she was happy and knew that she was surrounded by people that cared for her. And I basically looked at him and I said, you know what, put the education part aside. Just try and make Kennedy happy. I said, if you want to get her to count steps when she's walking up steps, go ahead. But for me, education is secondary right now. Just somewhere safe, that she's taken care of, that she's social, she's interacting, that she's happy. But unfortunately, they age out of the school system at 21.
Right. And
So-
Kennedy's 22.
Yeah, she aged out. Well, she's soon to be 23. She aged out June of 2023. I always thought if I were going to write a book, the title of my book would be What Happens at 21.
What is there at 21 for a young adult like Kennedy with Kennedy's needs?
With Kennedy's needs, basically zero options until we found them all. Zero. And I'll back up a bit. She started her last year, September of 2022. I knew it was going to be a long process to try and find something for her. Okay, what happens in June of 2023? So I hit the road. And I sat in Elvis Lovelace's office on a conference call with Crystal Lynn Hallwell, education minister at the time, trying to see if we can get approval for another year.
Yeah.
If we didn't have anywhere to go. Paul Pike, Community Service Social Development, on the phone with him. MHA, John Hogan. The number of doors I knocked on, the phone calls I've made, there was nothing. I'm like, what are we to do with Kennedy come June of 2023 for me and my wife to be able to continue work and have some kind of support and resources and programming for Kennedy. One of the guidance counselors found Amal and put us onto Amal. So we knocked on Amal's door and we started a relationship. And then meeting after meeting after meeting with social workers, nope, they're not going to approve funding. I'm like, okay, well, what is there? What do you expect us to do as parents? Basically, their only answer was respite care hours. So, I mean, yeah, respite care is good, but go out and try and find a respite care worker that's suitable.
Yeah, to meet the specific challenges and to have the experience to actually know how to do that, right? As opposed to just and it's not selling short respite care workers for the work they do, but this is a specific. This is a very specific situation.
Absolutely. I mean, Kennedy is an absolute angel, but when that switch goes off, that you're like, okay, where did this devil come from?
Yeah.
Right. And aggressive acts and she could clean off a table, it's just wow out of nowhere, and just know how to deal with that. And I mean, my younger daughter came home from university one day, and here's Kennedy chasing the respite care worker around the table.
Yeah.
And Avery's 18, and she looks at the lady, and she's like, yeah, you might as well just go on home before mom gets there, right? They just have no way of dealing with the behaviors.
No.
And but the thing that gets me is the loopholes and the mountains that you have to climb, the energy, the time to put into where we are today. After talking to all these MHAs, ministers at that, and then all these meetings with the social workers, I walked into Vera Polin with Kennedy. I like to take Kennedy everywhere I go because it's always good. I'm a from Burgio, bad guy, face to a name, right?
Yeah.
And I walked into Vera Plain one day when it was just me and her, and I heard about the place, and so I went over, and they were great. They took me and Kennedy through, and I was observing everything in the hour-long walk. And I was like, people were using the washroom. They're all sat down eating, and I'm like, do you guys have one-on-one workers? And they're like, no, they basically have like 3 or 4 workers for every dozen individuals in Vera Plain. And I'm like, basically because of capacity and stuff like that. And it's like not just Vera Plain that you can just go up and put Kennedy there because there's capacity. I almost had to wait till someone leaves or unfortunately someone passes away because they're adults of all ages. I left Vera Plain. I walked through the parking lot. I buckled Kennedy in the backseat of my truck, and I was heartbroken. I looked at her with tears in my eyes and said, Kennedy, what are we going to do with you? We had 0 options until Amal came along. And to get Amal, we had to go through, because they wouldn't fund it, and then meeting after meeting with social workers trying to prove what Amal can do for us as a family. I actually went through my own private insurance, and I think I did about 4 weeks with Amal, billing my own private insurance so they can compile information for me to bring to the social workers. So the social workers basically, and when I was going to these social workers, I mean, I went to the citizens rep, we contacted Empower. I'm like, I started learning, and I'm like, more people I can build and put on my army for Kennedy. Like, let's go. My sister-in-law is a social worker. I said, Taffy, let's go to every meeting. And then we had a social worker. She was great from Empower. I'm sorry I forget her name, but she came along to meetings. So they seen that I was growing, and I wasn't backing down. And so I brought all the information from them all, and I was like, okay, here's what they can do. And they're like, oh, okay, we can do all this. I said, if you can do all this, let's start the ball running.
Okay.
All right? I said, meet back here in a month. We met back in a month, 0. I said, don't ask me to come back for another meeting until you have something of substance to tell us.
Yeah.
And they knew they couldn't duplicate what Amal was willing to put forward for Kennedy, and finally gave in. And so it's like Kennedy gets like 22 hours now. It might not be a lot. There's 168 hours in a week, but those 22 hours are like immeasurable for me and my wife and younger daughter.
Yeah. For family self-care and getting some stuff done, right? Like for caretakers. Let me go to Megan Pottle now on this too. You were nodding your head for some of it. So talk to us a bit more about your family situation and what kind of spoke to you from what Cory was saying here.
I think some of the like systemic navigation pieces around like particularly with the school system, but also just like I think like referral times and wait times and like all of those pieces. So my youngest kiddo, he's 7 now. He spent his kind of like early years in a day home, and I actually had kind of shifted career paths leading up to the pandemic, and so I was in a fortunate position to be home with my kids during the pandemic. But then when I went back to work after that time and looked to have childcare put in place for my kids, we just had daycare breakdown after daycare breakdown, and like so we were unable to avail of a registered daycare spot because we just kept having breakdown. And so my kids are beneficiaries of Nunavut civil government. And so we went through the Inuit Child First Initiative to get some kind of private funding for like an unregistered day home, because that was what he needed, was like a smaller setting that could provide some flexibility.
Yeah.
And we couldn't find a registered day home that would be subsidized. And so we were looking at like $45 a day as like 2 single income households, in addition to our other kids' needs and, maintaining our households. And it was just not financially feasible. And so we were lucky to get that funding, and that situation worked out well. And then school started. And we saw, when we looked at like what was available for after school programming, a lot of registered daycares since COVID, the kind of number of like after school spots in those settings have really gone down. And so much of the after school care in the community is looking like private programs like through the Y or through the City of St. John's. And most of those programs, apart from the City of St. John's, doesn't have like an inclusion element. You can't get like a respite included in the price or whatever. And so we went with the city, and when he got invited to leave that program, the city said he can't return without respite. So we applied for without inclusion. So we applied for the inclusion program through the city. And they were like, well, he doesn't meet the criteria for the inclusion program. He can't be here without inclusion, but he doesn't meet the criteria for the inclusion program. How do we navigate that as a family, right? And so, yeah, I think like all of this, all the while, you know, from the time he was 2.5 until he was like 5 and got to the school situation, you know, we were going through getting referred to like developmental psychology and like looking for like assessment support. But like, just as an example, he got referred when he was 2 to the Janeway for developmental psych, and he saw the developmental pediatrician and psychologist team just in the last year, and he's now 7. So this is the first time.
Referred when he was 2.
2.5.
And a half.
Yeah.
Now 7. So that's the amount of time it took.
Yeah.
With the wait list.
Yeah.
To go
Took
through.
over 3 years to get everything sorted out. Like once he got referred and like got through systems. So it was to be 7 now, but it was about a year ago we saw him. So yeah. What 3 years.
kind of a difference do you think it would have made had the wait list not been multi-years in length?
I don't know, because unfortunately, kind of the ways that, you know, I have been a parent to 5 children. My 2 youngest are actually they're not my belly babies. They came to our family in a different way, and we fostered their 2 older siblings who are members of our immediate family. All 4 of these kiddos for about 7 years when they were younger. So as a parent and as a social worker, I guess I've been in this like realm of like the intersections of parenting and systemic advocacy for a really long time, and looking for like unique ways to meet my kids' needs and support them in navigating systems. And sometimes it really doesn't matter how many people you bring to the table or how much fire you have behind you when you're showing up to these conversations, because ultimately the systems that make the decisions make the decisions. And like it really does unfortunately become about being the squeaky wheel, right? Like about who you're willing to talk to and who you're willing to ask hard questions to in front of other people, which is like, it shouldn't be that way.
I just want to interject there, and it's funny that you said the squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
I've won about this whole process, well, everything I do with Kennedy, as respectful and polite, and just asking for Kennedy's care, because that's our primary concern. And that gets you nowhere. All these people, all these ministers I spoke to, I felt like, oh, we feel sorry for you, Mr. MacDonald. We'll see what we can do, and click. And I feel like when they hang up the phone, it's like, oh, I hope Mr. MacDonald doesn't call me back. But you got to be the squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
For instance, you talk about health care.
100%.
Kennedy had an urgent tests ordered last July, August, September. We went 6-8 months, not even an appointment booked. I called my MHA's office every week, and I made a point of it, every week for up to 12 weeks. And then finally I said to his assistant, I said, you know what? I hate to do this, and it goes against every fiber of my body, but tomorrow morning I'm picking up the phone, I'm calling Patty Daly, and it's the second time I've called Patty Daly before we got this process going as well.
Yeah.
I hate to do it and like basically throw doggy do on people's shit to get reaction, on people's shoes to get reaction. Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay.
But March 13th at about 11:10 a.m., I called Patty Daly.
Yeah.
After 15 minutes of talking to Patty Daly, my phone, after 10 minutes I hung up, my phone rung. Guess who it was? My MHA. Why didn't that MHA return one of my phone calls in the past 12 weeks? As that MHA is talking to me, my wife's phone rings. St. Clair's. Kenny's pre-op book next Tuesday.
Stuff moved. Right.
Right.
And
that's what ends up happening, right?
Well, and this, I mean, the picture you've both painted, right? Of and you're folks who advocate and advocate and advocate, and you build up as you know, whatever voices you can to make your cases to advocate for your kids, right? I mean, and just I think it's very telling of how much it takes. If like the minute you've got if there's any child or young adult or whatever in a family who has some kind of a different special needs or something else, like it's very, I think, informative of the mountains you have to move with the system as it is, where there are already big wait lists and everything else. I'll hit pause on this part of the conversation because I want to go to Corner Brook right now. We've got Caitlin on the line, who's your folks' coworker. Caitlin, give us an introduction of yourself and what you do in Corner Brook.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm the manager of out-of-home care here in Corner Brook.
All right, so Caitlin Garnier, manager of out-of-home care. What does that mean exactly?
So we work with individual living arrangements, emergency placement care, and group care here on the West Coast. So children that have been removed from their home, so it's out-of-home care.
For work, so with out-of-home care under this umbrella of Amal Youth and Family Services, you're located in Corner Brook. Oftentimes on the show, I talk about, we look at there's urban settings and rural settings, and there's oftentimes an urban-rural divide for things. What's the picture like around for the needs for these types of services in and around Corner Brook and in rural Newfoundland and Labrador compared to perhaps the St. John's area?
Well, the needs for out-of-home care, there's a high demand. We often get interest and referrals for out-of-home care here. Some of the struggles that we do face are, being able to open up a new home would be staffing capacity in terms of the out-of-home care stuff. Getting housing, getting appropriate staff that can do the job. That would be a bit of a struggle here where we have a smaller pool of people to pull from. In regards to the behavioral health portion of things out on the West Coast, we are piloting some things. We've been really lucky to be able to work with Sarah and Lauren. They've supported a lot of the stuff that we've started out here. So there hasn't been that big of a difference, I think, being in Corner Brook when it comes to the behavioral health stuff, because they've supported us really well in starting what we want to start out here.
So then paint the picture of what's happening now, weeks, months, like how will things evolve and develop with the work that you're doing for care that's happening?
Yeah, so right now we are working with the children in our individual living arrangements with behavioral health, and we've seen great success in that. So it's echoing some of the things that people have already said. We've seen increased time in school for some of our young people who are only getting to go for, say, 45 minutes to an hour at a time. We have children in half days now, and that will continue to increase for them. We have children that weren't able to engage in, social settings, so extracurricular activities. And in doing this program, we have been able to help those young people be able to socialize in those different capacities. So we are just doing that in our out-of-home care homes right now. But with the way everything is going, our practitioners are getting lots of experience in our individual living arrangements. We would really hope to have a clinic out here to be able to service the West Coast as well. Timeline, I wouldn't be able to really give a timeline, but we're hoping within the next year to be able to service not just the kids in our individual living arrangements, but also the children, that come like Kennedy, what I mean, that need something outside of school, or they need help in different areas of learning just in our community that do live at home with their parents to help support the families as well.
Caitlin, thanks so much. Yeah, because I wanted you on the show just to kind of, whenever we talk, right, this show, it's a provincial show. So when there's stuff going on in other parts of the province, it's good to give people an idea of the effort and work that is happening in other parts as well. Caitlin Garnier, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, folks, you're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Today here on the show, we're talking about children, adolescents, and adults who have really complex behavioral needs. We talk about supports that are needed for folks to reach their full potential while prioritizing safety, dignity, joy. It's a family discussion today. We've got a couple of parents in here, and I'm going to go back to my main two guests as well here. Well, all four of the main guests for the show, to be honest. But we've got Sarah McCarthy, senior behavior analyst with Amal and Family Youth Center, Laura Walsh Martino, manager of behavioral health supports. Megan Pottle is here, a parent, as well as Cory McDonald, a parent. All right, so we've heard about some of the family dynamic, right, and getting to the point of help, which is needed. So let's go back to you two. What is it that happens when you work with, whether it's kids, young adults? What's a day like?
It can look different for every single person who walks in the doors.
Yeah, of course.
So currently we have the way that we have structured our program, and it's taken time to get there, but we now have two separate streams, but all kind of doing parallels of the same work. So what we offer for young people who require this level of support, we do have clinical skills-based teaching sessions. So the kids will come into the clinic. We offer three different times a day in 2-hour time blocks. They'll work with our behavioral health practitioners, and that's where a lot of the skill teaching takes place. We also offer a therapeutic respite component of this. Now, we only offer that for individuals who are obtaining an element of clinical services, because the way that we've structured our program is that individuals learn the skills within the clinic setting, but then we take the therapeutic respite component, and that's where we use that to generalize the skills, whether it be in an after-school program, whether it be in the family home. So it works really well for parents because they get a break, they get respite, they don't have to knock on doors to try to find places who can take their children. We will accompany, we will do those things. And our behavioral health practitioners who are doing this piece of the work are also very much trained based on the individual's programming. They know their goals. They know the things to say, to not to say. They have the same blueprint as our behavioral health practitioners in the clinic.
Sarah, you want to, I guess, take the puck and keep going with the descriptions of the day-to-day?
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, I guess, the day-to-day looks very different, and it looks very different for every individual that kind of comes into the clinic. So we do prioritize teaching skills through a place of joy. So happy, relaxed, and engaged is a term that we use a lot in our clinic because we want to make sure all individuals are at that state before we try to teach, because this is when you learn. Because the complexities of the individuals we work with are pretty high, happy, relaxed, and engaged also looks very, very different depending on who you're working with. Mm-hmm. For some of our learners, that may be sitting in a beanbag chair on an iPad watching their favorite shows. For others of our learners, we are running around with shaving cream and water balloons and making a huge mess. So when I say our services are individualized, they very much
Big
are.
range, yeah.
Big range. Lots of fun, interesting messes to clean up and a run of a day for sure. And then our skills are also, our skill teaching programs are also highly individualized. We don't have two children working on the same program. So it's through meeting with the family, kind of seeing, what are the dangerous behaviors that we're dealing with here? What are the skill deficits that this individual has? What are some skills that would be helpful for you and your family? What would make life better for your family? And that's kind of where we prioritize our teaching, and at least that's our starting point. And then from there, kind of the sky's the limit is what we can kind of do to help improve the lives of these individuals.
So Megan and Cory, for yourselves, and what was it like for you, day 1, week 2, week 3, with your kids and Amal, and just receiving this type of support? What has it meant so far? What have you noticed?
First off, Kennedy would have loved your puck reference, so she'll definitely take a shot with that. Big hockey fan, Daddy's hockey buddy. Just one example of what Amal's meant to our family and to Kennedy. We were at a point with Easter Seals, great program up there, beautiful facility. But the current respite care workers that we had weren't trained.
Yeah.
So we received an email from Easter Seals one day that basically, if we are not able to send Kennedy with a respite care worker that can protect Kennedy, protect the worker, or other individuals at Easter Seals or Easter Seals workers, that basically Kennedy was not going to be allowed back.
And what would it mean for Kennedy not to have Easter Seals? Because it's such they do such great work, right? And I've seen the importance of Easter Seals' work. So what would it mean for Kennedy?
I looked at Kennedy after I read the email, and I Kennedy, what are you doing? Like this, you love going to Easter Seals, you love socializing, you love being out. Why are you ruining everything? But she doesn't have the comprehension to understand and be able to tell Dad why. But Easter Seals at the time was basically 10 to 2:30, 3 in the afternoon, which is like a 5-6 hour break. People take for granted, okay, if you're at a loaf of bread or a carton of milk, you can just up in your vehicle and go to the grocery store. Me or Tina, basically, one of us needs to be home. We just can't just jump up and go without one or the other being home. So if we don't have that 10 to 2 or 10 to 3 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Like, I'm dropping Kennedy off to Mom's parking lot. Mom's coming out of work, taking Kennedy out of my vehicle, putting it in Mom's vehicle. I'm going on to work.
Yeah.
That's what our life was like, basically exchanging Kennedy in the parking lots of work. So we were able to get approval for Amal workers to attend Easter seals. And I think they were happy with it because they get to see Kennedy in a different setting and to use their workings and apply it to Easter seals, being around a larger group, I would think, at Easter seals. And since that, it's like, wow, 180-degree turn. Like, she's a model participant at Easter seals now. They love her. She gets up and she's excited to go to Easter seals. That didn't happen before. She's never excited. No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm going to Easter seals tomorrow. Yay. She's excited. So that is a direct result of them all.
Sounds like there's a lesson around appropriate and focused care, right?
Well, Amal's got an individual.
Yeah.
They look at Kennedy and then they look at Megan's kids and, okay, what is their needs? It's not like let's judge these people in black and white lines.
There's no cookie cutter, right?
No.
It's just like, let's focus on the individual
On the
and
individual
the family.
needs.
Right.
And that's the focus that Amal's got, and it's not available anywhere else. And most of these are younger kids, but like I say, what happens at 21?
Right.
Kennedy's 22.
Yeah.
Right? So Amal was only taking people up to 18. So you imagine the dogfight that we had. Right? So.
Megan, what about yourself?
I guess one of the things that I have always reflected on and like my own kind of pieces of gratitude as a parent and like just trying to, you know, when things are hard and overwhelming and you feel like you don't have the support that you need. And like the way I've just kind of explained it to people is like, I've never had the experience in being a parent where like I can get up and get my kids ready in the morning and bring them to school and go to work and believe that it's just reasonable that I will see them at 5 p.m. Right? And I think people don't like talk about that enough for like what that creates for families and the impact it has to children in like their perspective of consistency in their day, that like we're having to leave our jobs on a daily basis. You know, when we kind of got Amal more significantly involved, we had gone to them to contract inclusion support for summer camp as an initial service. And when that contract expired and we were looking to then have inclusion for after school programming, that's when we learned about behavioral health and about around the option to do, you know, the clinic hours and the skills-based therapy intervention and then bring those things into other settings, including our after school inclusion element. And so the things that we saw happen during that time frame, we started that in September. And I think it was around, I think it was like before Christmas that year, I was like in this place where I was like, this is the first time in my parenting journey of 12 years that I've ever been able to like get up and go to work in the morning and be like, I love you, I'll see you at supper time. Ever. That's the first time. Across 5 children with varying complex needs. And like that's so impactful, not just for me, but for my kids, because there's an element of like, they recognize that the impact of like their behavior or like their, lack of self-regulation or like the challenges they're facing, their high emotions, how those things then are impacting their family and the people that they love too, right? And when all the messaging that they're getting in every setting that they navigate in school, in daycare, in, after school program, in summer camp, in social settings is that you're wrong. Something about you is inherently wrong, that you can't be here and navigate this space and be included and be present because you make people unsafe or you can't control your behavior or your reactions or this or that, right? Like the impact of that is profound on a child, right? And then on an adult if it doesn't ever get remedied, if that narrative doesn't get shifted for them, right? By the people who care for them and love them and create space for them. And I guess yeah, I just in this realm, you know, like my youngest little bean, he was having like a period of time where like they were looking to reduce his school days. They were going to put him down to like an hour a day. And, you know, Amal was involved at that point. And this was a point where they were like, well, instead of doing that, why don't we ramp up clinic time? And that keeps him out of school for a couple of hours a day. We start the day with the clinic time every day, Monday to Friday. And so we were having a period of time where we were picking him up from school every single day. Some days we weren't getting him to school. Some days he wouldn't even get in the door. To this school year, with that service in place from like partway through the last school year, through the summer, this school year, until we had a funding cut. I'm going to talk about that. But this school year, we've had 2 calls home, only 2, to have him picked up from school, whereas previously he wasn't getting through a day.
So yeah, not one day before, and this year only 2 calls.
We've had 2 calls
for the full thing.
For the whole year, where we've had to pick him up because of.
Before I go to the others, tell me about this funding cut.
So, yeah, we access services through Amal through Jordan's Principle, and I thought it was interesting what your colleague from the West Coast had said around like how these services right now on the West Coast are only being kind of utilized in in care settings, right, in out-of-home care settings. So that means for children in care of the province. That means children in care and custody of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. So when you are a child in care, my children came to me, my 2 youngest children came to my home as foster children, and we sought independent custody of them because we're immediate family, to keep them out of a situation of being in the custody of the province. So we don't any longer have support from the province. We are their custodial legal guardians, and they're parents for all intents and purposes on paper. So we don't have any financial support from the province or access to anything that otherwise the province might provide access to. But when we look at, you know, even if Amal wasn't available, when we look at a child in care and custody, if they're in a setting of like family-based care or they're in an ILA setting, you know, the challenges of like, how does this impact a family's ability to provide for their children and take care of their home and like earn a living and then also, you know, make sure their children's needs are met, right? That doesn't apply. And so right now we're going through Jordan's Principle for this funding, but we've had a lot of challenges with getting, you know, things like coming back on contracts with notes around like, oh, well, we're not going to pay this portion of the cost because it's for supervision. So children don't deserve services with adequate clinical supervision to assure that those services are provided in a meaningful and appropriate way. Like I struggle with kind of some of the nuances when this is our only avenue to access these services. Yeah, and I guess I get frustrated in that piece of conversation because when we look at, you know, what your colleague had just noted, it's like for a long time our province was actually relying heavily on Jordan's Principle for Indigenous children in care, and that has actually decreased people's general access to utilizing Jordan's Principle in a really profound way. So Jordan's Principle has stopped funding things in ways that they have in the past for everyone because, in large part, in my opinion, because the province overdrew on Jordan's Principle and because our education resources are inadequate. I mean, in terms of like the IRT resources that the province allots per school. So like my child has Jordan's Principle coverage in school as well.
And Jordan's Principle, it's a national.
So Jordan's Principle national program. My children actually go through Inuit Child First Initiative. I end up calling it Jordan's Principle, but that's a national program. It's a federal program. But Newfoundland and Labrador has seen a lot of cuts in the last 6 months to resources that children in the community are getting through Jordan's Principle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for the explainer around that.
Yeah.
And it's something I'll talk to you after the show a little bit more about it, actually. We've heard gaps, right? So we're hearing gaps. Like, I think through the course of this show, right, like, it's easy to hear about where there are gaps in the system. And it's also like why you folks are doing what you're doing. How do we stack up compared to other jurisdictions in Canada, other provinces?
It's a really good question. So, I mean, it's interesting, and some of this even goes back to, I was nodding my head when Megan was making the comment, especially around the supervision, how easy it is for a funding source to look at what we propose for a treatment plan and budget and say, oh, we're not going to pay this because supervision does not impact the one-on-one time. So I guess just going back a little bit, when we started Amal Behavioural Health, one of the foundational decisions was to ensure that all members of our team, from leadership down to our frontline behavioral health practitioners were all somewhat credentialed or seeking credentialing from the Behavior Analytics Certification Board. So this ensures ethical, evidence-based care aligned with global standards, and then those set forth by the Atlantic Provinces Association for Behavior Analysis. So this is a chapter which is an affiliate of the larger International Association for Behavior Analysis that supports Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. And they had released a statement on professional practice because behavior analysis is an unregulated profession within Atlantic Canada. So what we had decided to do based on that was that we were going to follow the statement of professional practice. And while there are no regulations or a regulatory body here in the province for behavior analytic treatment, by keeping in line with the Behavior Analytics Certification Board standards, we would ensure that we were followed by a regulatory body and had an ethics code, we are evidence-based, and that we're completing treatment to integrity the best that we can. And we have, like, any of our stakeholders, our clients, our families can reach out to the board at any time and they can advise, oh, this is I'm concerned about this. Like, there's a place where they can go with their concerns. Which is really important because behavior analytics services are not regulated in the province. Anybody can say that they're a behavior analyst and not have that amount of training where you would become board certified at any
So
stage
like
of the
in
game.
Ontario, for instance, there would be a board certification.
There is. So Ontario is currently the only province with the formal legislation regulating the practice of behavior analysis. That's been recent. And what they did was under the Regulated Health Professionals Act, the services fall under their scope of College of Psychologists of Ontario, which is the CPO. So this means that behavior analysts must either be registered by the CPO or working under the supervision of someone who is. So in contrast to that, Newfoundland and Labrador and the other provinces do not have a regulatory body, as I just mentioned, meaning there's really no legal requirements for practitioners to hold specific credentialing, follow the ethics code, or really undergo any kind of formal oversight. So when I devise a budget for whether it's Cory's family or Megan's family, I have to include clinical supervision because we do not do anything without the oversight of a board-certified behavior analyst to keep our treatment as ethical and to integrity as possible.
That's a very important explanation as we wind things down. Cory and Megan, just final thoughts, under a minute left each, because I've got to go to a piece of tape at the end. But just if it's a message for other parents out there, but something under a minute.
What I would love to see is that, like, there shouldn't be this much energy and effort and struggle for me and Megan to get services for our children or our young adults. If I could sit across from the Premier, John Hogan, and he can give me one ask, I'd be like, we all know how many students are aging out at 21. Just give us an option. Some families might not want the option, but some families do want the option. And you know what option Amal gives us? Just like Sarah said, like, it's going to work and continue to build independence and teach and try and improve quality of life and improve quality of life for the family. That is what Amal has given us. We didn't have that option. What we shouldn't have to climb these mountains and jump through these loopholes and spend much time and energy because, you know what, me and Megan spend a hell of a lot of time trying to care for our kids and adults, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Final thought for you, Megan?
I guess that, yeah, similarly to Cory, I think the biggest thing for me is that, like, when you've gone through every element of, like, trying to access supports for your children and you're restricted by, like, you know, waiting on referrals to go through or, like, the things that, like, you really genuinely have no control over as a parent, you've done everything that you can do. You're just waiting. I think that there can't be nothing left. Right? Our province has a responsibility, our health authority has a responsibility to make sure that there are options available. And particularly when we know that they exist and you just can't access them because of the financial element. It's unethical and it's not okay.
All right, we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you all for this discussion. Okay, listener feedback time. We wanted to share a message from one of our listeners about last Monday's show, which was about Red Dress Day. Arlette Lazarenko is here. Continue to fill us in, please.
Hi, Adam. So just a reminder for our listeners, a Red Dress Day, it's a day to honor the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender-diverse people. So we got a listener, Megan Sams, reached out to us. She's an Indigenous artist. She's Mi'kmaq and Imklakupmak, living in the Codroy Valley. This is what she had to say.
Well, I was really happy to hear the guests speak so publicly and openly about Red Dress Day and, you know, the ongoing issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. It's something that isn't addressed or talked very openly about in this province. So, I appreciated kind of the candid conversation. I wanted to add an important point that the violence of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people in the context of Oktahumgug is a very, very old one, and it's been ongoing for more than 500 years. I think it's important to point out in the context of this conversation and this place that this is the point of first European colonial contact, or very, very early European colonial contact. And there are so many unrecognized and unknown Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people who've gone missing. And in fact, I would say that some of the very first on Turtle Island were disappeared from here. So it's a contemporary issue that's ongoing, but it's one that has its roots from a very long time ago. It's just been going on for way too long, longer than I think the general public is aware of.
Megan Sams there talking with Arlette Lazarenko, who's here with me in the studio. There's a key issue that she brought up with you as well, right?
Yeah, she also mentioned, so in the show, we spoke about how in order to support victims of gender-based violence, especially in the Indigenous communities, we have to decolonize our systems. So Adam, think about policing, the justice system, even places set to support victims. So Sams had this to say about it.
I really believe that an equal amount of focus needs to be made on decolonizing practice and ways of engagement, and that will help with reconciling relationship. It's a long way to go since first contact here was in 1497, and a lot of information about Indigenous presence on this island isn't respected or even recognized a lot of the time. You know, there are political agreements and negotiations that predate the province, and an example of that is the Peace and Friendship Treaty that was ratified in my home community in September 1763. And there's no wide knowledge or respect of that. So there's a lot of work to do and a lot of deeper understanding of ancestral, not just understanding, but practice of ancestral governance and respecting constitutional rights of Indigenous people here. It's a lot to unwind, but it's probably the most important thing in our contemporary reality and immediately directly affects Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. And what's good for us is certainly good for everybody. Equality and respect, recognition, honor of a person's presence. That's good for everyone.
Megan Sams there speaking with Arlette Lazarenko, show associate producer. Megan, thank you so much for getting in touch with the show. As always, folks, if you have any thoughts on the show, you can reach us at any time, thesignal@cbc.ca. There's an email too, right, Arlette?
Yes. So to keep up with the message of Red Dress Day, we got an email about the Moose Hide Campaign Day Walk. It's a walk done all over the country to raise awareness on gender-based violence. It's happening this Thursday, May 15th, at the Amphitheater in Bowring Park at 4:30 p.m., and anyone can participate.
So, folks, if you want more details, just hit your old search button and look for the Moose Hide Campaign Day Walk. Arlette Lazarenko, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that is it for the show today. Tomorrow on the show, it's our season opener for a gardening season. Spread the word, green thumbs. Michael Murray will be my guest, and he's good to go for all of your grow questions. That is tomorrow. Lines will be open. Texts will be open. If you want to know how to garden for this upcoming season, or you just want to talk about your gardening, that's what tomorrow is for, and every Tuesday through the grow season. Cheers.